The courtroom's pulse spiked the instant Shakira stepped through the doors. No entourage, no stage glitter, just a razor-cut black blazer and eyes as steady as metronomes. Reporters jerked upright, jurors forgot to blink, and even the bailiff's posture stiffened as the judge pronounced her full name like a verdict. Shakira Isabel Mubarak Ripoll, please approach the stand. She crossed the aisle with the hush of velvet ropes parting, hair pinned back, chin unbowed, while Diddy's jaw flexed so hard a muscle jumped along his cheekbone. For years he'd ruled backstage corridors with velvet invitations and word-of-mouth threats, but now the most recognisable voice in Latin pop was about to speak in a room designed for silence. And everyone present felt the floorboards tilt, as if a single sentence from her could topple the whole empire. She raised her hand, swore the oath, and let a silence settle thick enough to feel, before leaning into the microphone. Voice low, almost a whisper that somehow carried to the farthest bench. "He thought I'd stay quiet," she said, and the phrase rippled through the room like a dropped stone in still water. Every neck craned, pens hovered mid-sentence. "He assumed that because I sing about love and survival, I wouldn't dare drag real pain into the light." Her gaze pinned the prosecution, not the defense, as if declaring whose side of history she occupied. Diddy sat motionless, but his knuckles blanched against polished mahogany. Shakira folded her hands, only her fingertips trembling. "He was wrong," she added, soft, final, volcanic. The gallery inhaled as one, realizing the courtroom had just shifted from legal procedure to reckoning, and that whatever came next would measure the true cost of silence. They had crossed paths for years in the gilded haze of award galas and label dinners, polite cheek kisses, champagne toasts, the usual choreography of fame, until one after-party on a rooftop in LA twisted the script. Diddy's arm draped over the balcony rail beside her, city lights glittering below, and his voice slid from flattery to warning with disorienting ease. "Global's cute," he murmured, swirling his glass, "but respect is local, and I own the block you need." He explained, almost kindly, that one unfavourable word from him could turn US radio silent, that English-language media loyalty was rented by the month, and that the industry already had its quota of Latin crossover stars. She laughed it off. Ego, she assumed. Yet 3 weeks later, a dream collaboration evaporated without explanation, and producers who once returned calls in minutes shifted to icy courtesy or ghosted altogether. That was the night she first understood how power could masquerade as a casual conversation. At first, the sabotage felt like static, tiny crackles she could almost ignore, a duet mysteriously postponed, a late-night talk show booking that vanished from the schedule, a magazine cover replaced at the last minute by a lesser-known act with the same label ties. Then the chill sharpened. 2 hours before a sold-out festival set, stage managers informed her segment was time compressed, slicing her headlining slot in half. A billion-stream single suddenly cratered on curated playlists, dropping 30 spots overnight with no algorithmic rationale. Emails probing for answers came back polite but hollow. Calls rang until voicemail. Longtime allies offered sympathetic emojis instead of explanations. One night backstage at a European awards show, she watched producers whisper over clipboards before someone approached, eyes downcast, to say the live broadcast would cut to commercial during her performance for sponsor obligations. In corridors once lined with applause, Shakira began to feel space constricting, proof that when a powerful man pulls just enough levers, the world doesn't scream, it simply turns the volume on you to zero. Months later, the prosecution projected a glossy behind-the-scenes snapshot onto the courtroom screen, Shakira and Diddy shoulder to shoulder at a 2017 awards gala, trophies in hand, smiles calibrated for tabloid perfection. Jurors leaned in, because on the surface it was just another red carpet relic, yet Shakira's voice threaded a darker caption over the frozen grin. "Seconds after that flash," she recalled, "he leaned in so only I could hear and said, 'Align yourself better if you want to stay visible.'" The warning was soft enough to pass for flirtation, but she felt its weight like a stone dropped in her pocket. In the photo, her eyes sparkled. In her memory, they were already calculating exit routes. "I gave that moment the benefit of the doubt," she told the jury. "But hindsight is unforgiving. It shows you every trap you smiled past." The contradiction between the image and her words hung in the air, proof that the brightest lights can cast the deepest shadows. When the defense finally rose, the attorney smoothed his tie and aimed for precision strikes. No emails, no contracts, no smoking gun texts, only feelings. Ms. Mebarak, can you produce a single document showing Mr. Combs ordered venues to drop you? She met his gaze without flinch. If you delete every text before hitting send, you won't find ashes in the fireplace, she replied, voice calm as rain. He pressed again. Could the downturn be market shifts, artistic lulls, coincidence? Shakira's rebuttal sliced clean. Coincidence doesn't call the same 10 people in 24 hours and tell them to lose your number. She gestured lightly to the gallery. Patterns leave fingerprints even when gloves are worn. A hush gripped the room. The attorney shuffled papers that suddenly seemed weightless. The jury absorbed her logic, not proof on paper but proof in repetition, realizing orchestration can reside in the spaces paperwork never touches, and that silence itself can be a signature. Ava Martinez, a graying publicist whose name had never trended once, stepped into the witness box clutching a notebook thick with neon tabs. She admitted she'd orchestrated coverage for dozens of artists under Combs Global. Elevate the darlings, mute the rebels was how she distilled the job. Flipping to a saffron-tagged page dated December 2018, she read, Shakira feature pulled from Winter Spread. Reason? Pivoting away from risky profiles. Another flip, magenta tag. A staff email chain marking her as non-essential and advising editors to cool visibility. Eva's voice didn't quake. The facts did the trembling for her. She explained that non-essential was code everyone understood. Remove playlist slots, rescind interview invites, freeze press pitches until the artist's momentum curdled into irrelevance. As she laid each photocopied email on the evidence tray, jurors traded looks that said louder than any objection. Invisible ink had just turned jet black, and the quiet freeze Shakira described was now stamped with timestamps, signatures, and corporate headers no velvet threat could erase. Marcus Lane, a veteran talent agent with 22 years of contract ink on his fingertips, opened a folder thicker than a tour rider and announced, Access runs this business, and Access answers to gatekeepers. He thumbed through call logs that mapped 3 festival cycles. Each showed Shakira pitched for prime slots. Each recorded the same cryptic rejection within 48 hours. Not the right fit this year. All 3 festivals, he noted, were partially sponsored by companies nested under Combs-aligned media umbrellas. Then the prosecution called a former social media strategist, face blurred in sworn anonymity, who projected an internal slide deck titled Narrative Control. On it, Shakira's headshot was slashed by a crimson diagonal. Beside it, 2 chilling bullet points glowed. Engagement drop predicted, and algorithmic dampening advised. She decoded the jargon for the jury. We throttled mentions, buried hashtags, and purged her songs from autoplay chains. Let the algorithm do the forgetting. In minutes, circumstantial whispers hardened into an industrial blueprint, showing how a superstar's spotlight can be dimmed not by scandal, but by a dozen quiet toggles flipped in back-end dashboards the public never sees. The prosecution's crescendo arrived as a courtroom speaker crackled to life with a voicemail dated 2018. Diddy's tone breezy, almost playful. You let her talk too long, everybody starts thinking they can say no. Make her quiet again, brother, before we've got chaos. The 20-second clip ended with a chuckle and a disconnect beep, yet the silence that followed boomed louder than any outburst. Jurors sat stone still, one hand fluttered to a witness's mouth, and Diddy's own attorney seemed to shrink inside his tailored suit. No threat explicit, no order spelled out, just the casual confidence of a man accustomed to pulling levers no one else could see. That offhand phrase, make her quiet again, welded every prior email, chart, and cancelled gig into a single, unmistakable command, transforming months of circumstantial frost into the smoking heat of intent. News of the voicemail streaked from courtroom Wi-Fi to worldwide feeds before the judge's gavel even tapped, and by lunchtime the courthouse steps had morphed into a live-wire amphitheatre, fans blasting Shakira's She-Wolf on portable speakers, activists waving placards that read, Make her quiet, watch us roar. Across Instagram, blue-check actors posted black squares captioned only with a wolf emoji. On Twitter, the hashtag #LetHerSpeak vaulted past political headlines in under an hour. One Grammy-winning singer dropped a cryptic story, "I said no once too," while a veteran choreographer tweeted a silent video of lips sealed by duct tape, tearing it off to reveal Shakira's initials in red marker. Brands that had ridden Diddy's tidal wave for decades issued overnight statements about re-evaluating partnerships, and a major playlist curator quietly swapped his tracks for hers, sparking Spotify sleuths to chirp, "The algorithm remembers." What began as courtroom testimony had erupted into a cultural verdict. The public was finished humming along to Power's quiet frequencies, and every new voice joining the chorus raised the volume on a reckoning that could no longer be dialed down. A soft-spoken data analyst took the stand next, projecting a kaleidoscope of graphs that turned gossip into geometry. One heat map painted Shakira's 2018 visibility across streaming, radio, and social chatter in blazing reds. Then, at a vertical line labelled post-gala decline, the colours froze to Arctic blue almost overnight. He clicked to a playlist placement timeline. Her tracks held steady for months, then plummeted within 48 hours of a single phone call logged from Combs Global to a major DSP. Next slide, festival offers, 3 confirmed headliner slots, 3 identical reversals stamped "not the right fit" mere days after that same call. "Organic downturns are gradual," he explained, laser pointer circling the cliff drop. "This pattern is engineered." The final screen displayed a Slack snippet between brand consultants, "Make her quiet again," superimposed on the cratered graph like a signature signing off on sabotage. "Numbers don't lie," the analyst concluded, "they only point to whoever's holding the mute button." The defense tried to yank momentum back by calling Quincy Q. Williams, a platinum-certified producer with a resume thick as a phone book, who glided to the stand in designer loafers and delivered a polished ode to Diddy's mentorship. Late-night studio sessions funded out of pocket, surprise tuition checks for backup singers, pep talks about empire mindset. His voice dripped sincerity, yet when the prosecutor asked for a single instance where Diddy elevated an artist who had publicly defied him, Williams stalled, eyes flicking toward the gallery, as though hunting for a teleprompter. He praised opportunities created, but couldn't name one Shakira had allegedly squandered. He insisted Diddy never blacklisted anyone, yet admitted he wasn't on the distribution calls or playlist channels where careers live or die. Each vague anecdote hung like mist over concrete evidence already in the jurors' hands, and by the time Williams stepped down, his glowing character sketch looked less like a rebuttal and more like perfume spritzed over smoke. The sweet scent noticeable, but utterly incapable of hiding the fire. At the day's close, the prosecutor rose, holding a single sheet of lined paper, Shakira's own handwriting looping across it in midnight blue ink. She explained that the singer never meant for the note to be public, but, after what we've all heard, agreed it belonged in the record. The words poured out quiet yet seismic. "To those who said I was too global to be hurt, I forgive you, but I will no longer protect you. Silence was survival, not strength, and I am done surviving." The gallery held its breath as the letter vowed to choose truth over comfort, voice over obedience, and promised, "No one owns my quiet ever again." When the prosecutor folded the page, the courtroom's hush felt cathedral deep. Diddy stared at the polished table, his reflection fractured by wood grain, while jurors sat motionless, faces lit by the realization that a private confession had just become public evidence, and that once truth hits air, it never folds back into the envelope. The prosecutor began her summation not with fire, but with a soft inquiry that pressed on every heartbeat in the box. What does it cost to say no when the gatekeeper owns the gate? She paced the rail, holding aloft the red carpet photo of Shakira and Diddy, flashbulbs bright, smiles paced perfect, then flipped it to reveal the internal memo stamped "Cool her down." "This," she said, tapping front and back, "is the distance between appearance and reality, and you have seen every inch of it." She recited the emails, the heat map plunge, the voicemail's lazy menace, knitting them into one unbroken chain. Threat, compliance, erasure. "No contract spells it out," she concluded, "because the contract is fear, and fear has signed too many artists already. The defense rose smooth as lacquered wood, praising Diddy's philanthropy, dismissing data as coincidence, calling whispers industry folklore. Yet each polished sentence floated against the iron weight of receipts already stamped and graphed. By the time counsel rested, the courtroom felt tilted. One side offered gloss, the other had offered gravity, and gravity never negotiates. The jury filed back in after only 6 hours, long enough to weigh every graph and voicemail, short enough to hum like certainty. Chairs scraped, pulse of the room slowed to a single collective inhale, and the foreperson's voice broke the hush. Diddy was liable on every count of interference and reputational harm. No gasp, no outcry, just the audible click of a power switch flipping off. Diddy stared at the verdict slip, as though words might rearrange themselves out of spite, but ink stayed put, and the empire's glow dimmed another notch. Outside, rain that had hovered all week split open to sunlight, carving a golden path across the courthouse steps where fans blasted "Hips Don't Lie" like a victory hymn. Shakira was nowhere in sight. She didn't need to be. Her absence now thundered louder than any encore, proof that a whispered no can echo long enough to make the world finally listen. The jury filed back in after only 6 hours, long enough to weigh every graph and voicemail, short enough to hum like certainty. Chairs scraped, pulse of the room slowed to a single collective inhale, and the foreperson's voice broke the hush. Diddy was liable on every count of interference and reputational harm. No gasp, no outcry, just the audible click of a power switch flipping off. Diddy stared at the verdict slip, as though words might rearrange themselves out of spite, but ink stayed put, and the empire's glow dimmed another notch. Outside, rain that had hovered all week split open to sunlight, carving a golden path across the courthouse steps, where fans blasted "Hips Don't Lie" like a victory hymn. Shakira was nowhere in sight. She didn't need to be. Her absence now thundered louder than any encore, proof that a whispered no can echo long enough to make the world finally listen.